Hello. We are back from the dead on Dino. My name's Eldin. We're talking about dinosaurs today. I've been gone for a while. Today, we're going to come back though and talk about dinosaurs. Canadian dinosaurs. If you missed it in the weeks, we're here. And today, I've got some dinosaur toys as well, which is always good to have on. And we're going to talk about some Canadian dinosaurs. We're into the L's, we're into the O's, and we're into the P's. And it'll be a fun day. So to start us off, jump right back into it, we have... I would say probably one of the strangest ceratopsians I've ever seen, which is Leptoceratops, which means small horned face or thin horned face. Now, this thing looks like a parrot on crack. It's got like spiny hairs at the back of its tail. It's a very derpy little creature. I would not, if Protoceratops is much better in my opinion, this thing just looks rough. That being said, I'm not going to pick on it too much. It's pronounced Leptoceratops. As all things ceratops are. It was first discovered in 1910 by Barnum Brown in Red Deer Valley, which is in Alberta. After 4 years, Barnum had named it, for the first time, Leptoceratops. The first specimen, though, didn't have an intact skull, so because of that, C.M. Sternberg found a better preserved specimen and one complete skeleton in 1947. So for a while, it didn't have a head, which is kind of rough. 30 years later, after that, we found more remains in Bighorn Basin in northern Wyoming, which is kind of cool. So it was one of those dinosaurs where we found pieces of it, got a name, then we didn't have a head, so you can't really judge it on that. It was about 2 meters long, or 6.6 feet. However, there was a researcher called Taranchenko who proposed that it could have been 3 to 4 meters, or that's 9.8 to 13.1 feet. And the supposed weight could be up to 100 kilos. That's approximately 220 pounds. So this thing was, at its smaller size, me. It was as tall as I am almost, or longer than I'm tall, and weighed as much as I do. So a very interesting dinosaur in that sense. I said it was found in Alberta and Wyoming, and it lived during the Maastrichtian period of the Cretaceous, which is about 66 or 67 million years ago. The dinosaur is known from a couple specimens, as I did say, some of which are almost complete, and so we know quite a bit about this thing, which is really important to know. If you were to look back at 170 million years ago, we had a very small early ceratopsian called Yinglong, and Yinglong, found in China, it looked a lot like this dinosaur. The thing is, though, Yinglong evolved into like Triceratops, Styracosaurus, Centrosaurus, Chasmosaurus, all these huge ceratopsians, and Leptosaurus was like, hey, you know what? I see everyone getting bigger, everyone's doing their own thing. I'm going to stay the same size and get ugly. And it did. It didn't go well for Leptosaurus. And in another strange fate, Leptosaurus lived in the same area as Triceratops. So you had Triceratops and Leptosaurus existing in the same area at the same time. And the question is why? Like, you don't really see a ton of ceratopsians in the same area with each other sometimes. They usually fill different niches. So again, Triceratops, much bigger. Leptoceratops, much smaller. So it made sense that you had different niches. Leptoceratops wouldn't have to compete. It would be able to just, eat, I think they probably ferns and other things like that, while Triceratops could have eaten much larger. So not a lot of competition. They never competed for food, as I said. From the fossil record, we also know that it was quadrupedal for the most part. So Yinglong, early ceratopsian, walked upright, we at least think, on its, it was bipedal and had smaller forelimbs. Leptoceratops, we think, was quadrupedal for the most part, because its back legs were so much longer than its front legs, but the way its body was angled, it was kind of on an angle, so it walked on all fours, with the possibility to be able to walk on its back legs. It's not entirely proven yet. It also would have helped it reach higher vegetation. We know that some sauropods probably could have reared up. It might have done that. The ability to switch from quadrupedal to bipedal is not new by any means, because a lot of hadrosaurs also could do that. Like other ceratopsians, it had a beak, cropping vegetation, and at one point it has a second name, which was Leptoceratops cerorhinoichus, which is now just called Monteraceratops. So it was found, we're like, hey, this is a new species, wow. And then we're like, actually, it's its own thing. It's Monteraceratops. It was first found in 1942, but in 2001, it had its own name, and later in 2012, It was then regrouped in the Leptoceridae taxon. So Leptoceridae taxon is kind of the family name. So that Leptoceridae taxon translates to small, ugly, and dumb Triceratopses, because it kind of is, unfortunately. That's Leptoceratops. If you like it, that's fantastic. I'm not like Triceratopsians got big for a reason, and Leptoceratops didn't do well on its own. Next, we have Ornithomimus, which name means bird mimic. So you can pronounce it Ornithomimus. For some reason, the TH makes an F sound. It's synonymous with Dromaeoceromimus, which I talked about a couple weeks ago. Well, actually, at this point, it's months ago. Meaning that these two are one and the same for the most part, we think. It was first named by Othniel Charles Marsh in 1890 from a hand and a foot, which is a great way to name a species when all you have is a hand and a foot. It's found in both Canada and the States. And the problem was, many individuals have been found, but most of them have been incomplete. It's an early dinosaur. It suffers from this, I'll talk about it later as we go along, but it suffers from the wastebasket taxon syndrome. So it lived during the Campanian to the Maastrichtian of the Cretaceous, which is about 70 million to 66 million years ago. Ornithomimus has two recognized species, Ornithomimus velox, which is a type species, meaning that Ornithomimid species is named after this one. All Ornithomimids, Ornithomimidae, that's named after just this one. And the other one is Ornithomimus edmonticus. Over the years, they've had a bunch of other ones that were like named under it, but then after kind of looking at it, it's either been dubious or they've been reassigned to their own things. Because again, we don't know a ton about this. So there's a lot of information, but it's had a lot of trials and tribulations. So it's thought it could have been an omnivore. And again, we don't really know. It didn't have teeth. That's a big issue. So we think it's possible due to a couple factors. I have them here. One, they're descendants of theropods. So theropods are the meat-eating dinosaurs. All dinosaurs except for Therizinosaurus. But Therizinosaurus was a theropod. It's a weird one. So all theropods, we know for the most part, eat meat. So that's one. Two, instead of the normal jaws that supported teeth, they had a beak-like mouth that could have been suited for grazing plants or cropping vegetation. But we see in modern-day birds that eat insects and small mammals, you don't need teeth to do it. Seagulls eat rabbits sometimes. Like we've seen it. They do it their own way. So that's another reason why it could have used its beak as a weapon, or could have scavenged. And three, like some birds now who swallow their prey whole, it would make sense that Ornithomimus could have. Since it didn't have teeth, it would have had to swallow things whole. Owls are one of the best, I would say, one of the best birds of prey, and they don't have teeth. You look at most birds, actually all birds, except for, I think geese don't really count, but all birds don't have teeth. They do just fine. So why couldn't Ornithomimus? It's kind of a throwaway argument in my sense, like, because it's like, why, if it's not, then is it? But at the same time, some facts stand. The sizes vary between species, with the largest ones being up to 3.8 meters long, or approximately 12.5 feet, so quite a long dinosaur. They were up to 2 meters tall, so 6.6 feet. Ornithomimids, sometimes called the ostrich dinosaur, very, very relatable, are classified as small dinosaurs. So I thought, you know what, 12 feet long, 6 feet tall, this thing, it's a big dinosaur. No, it's classified as a small dinosaur, which it's bigger than me, so it counts for something. At the time of the late Cretaceous, Ornithomimids appeared to be widespread across North America, so they were everywhere, and Asia. It's thought they could have relied on their speed instead of any other defense to escape predators. They didn't have spines, they didn't have a frill or claws, they weren't really made to fight back, they're made to run. Like pronghorn, like zebras, like wildebeest, they all just run for the most part, they don't fight. They share their habitat with Tyrannosauruses, so different tyrannosaurs, ceratopsians, and ankylosaurs. So a lot of dinosaurs that they shared a habitat with, and they kind of fit into a nice niche where they could just go back and forth between whatever worked for them. Thanks to it being an early discovered dinosaur, it suffered from the wastebasket taxon syndrome, which I've coined the term, I believe. If I haven't, well, that's okay, but I'll trademark it. Meaning, since it and Struthomimimus were the first ornithomimids found ever, most of other ornithomimids that were found after that in the kind of same, like similar areas, were just thrown in and said like, yeah, you know, we named it from a foot and a hand. let's just say this head works, this body works, this idea works. So it's like it's like Frankenstein's monster, in the sense that it just whatever we didn't know, we just put in with it. It's also happened with Megalosaurus, which was a tyrannosaur that had bones from hadrosaurs, bones from like sauropods, bones from other T-Rex, like other tyrannosaurs, and just threw it all together because they didn't know. And iguanodon, classic iguanodon. If you look up early pictures of iguanodon, it looks like a fever dream, and iguanodon just had everything thrown in. They thought it had a horn at one point. It was a wild time. So found in 1890, 82 years later, in 1972, Dale Russell sits down and says, hey, I'm going to take a look at this pile of bones, titled Ornithomimus, and see if I can figure out which goes with what. It's like a puzzle, but all the pieces are upside down, and you take time to turn upside down, see, okay, that one definitely doesn't go here, put it over there. And he did. He sat down and said, you know what, I'm going to try it, and he did. And he separated Ornithomimus and Struthiomimus into their own genuses. And then he even had two extra, which are Archaeornithomimus and Droseomimus, which we talked about before. And these ones were like taken and said, hey, the bones don't fit into Ornithomimus and Struthiomimus, so it has to be something else. So then you have a new species. And then, okay, the bones don't fit with this one too. So then you have another new species. And it just kind of kept boop, boop, boop. And you have 4 species now, instead of just one Ornithomimus. There's still quite a debate on Droseomimus and Ornithomimus being its own thing, or related species, or like a subspecies, or... there's a lot going on. I talked about it a couple episodes ago. It looks like a big emu. Calling back to the name ostrich lizard, when you look at Ornithomimus, you can kind of see why it's called ostrich lizard. It's got long, powerful legs, like an ostrich, which you'd think means it can run. And for this part, we think it did, because it's I guess the lower part of the leg, like past the knee, was much longer than the upper part, so that gave it great long strides. It was probably, at the time, the fastest dinosaur in its ecosystem, aside from other ornithomimids, letting it get away from brutes like Tyrannosaurus and Albertosaurus, which we talked about in another episode. I think the first one, actually. We aren't really too sure how it would have fared against faster predators. Younger T-Rexes fit a different ecological niche. Younger T-Rexes were smaller, lighter, and that's kind of the idea, we think, around Nanotyrannus and all these things, where it wasn't a different species, but it was a whole different body plan until it put on weight. So, you're a skinny little guy, you're a track runner, you're like, you know what, I'm gonna go to the gym, you get jacked. You do that over a course of 3 years, you're still the same person, but you fit now a different niche. And that's kind of what we think would happen with T-Rex. So younger T-Rexes probably could have ran at least fast enough to catch them, or tried to. It had hollow bones to cut down on weight, like birds. It had stiff tail that helped support it while it was running. So the stiff tail let it kind of like have balance. The tail is half the body length, which is wild. And like ostriches, you had large eyes and a long neck, letting it sit above to see, like almost like a periscope, what's coming towards me. Hopefully, you wouldn't be able to ambush this thing, because it's always looking around. It has to eat and sleep sometimes, but it's always looking around, seeing what's going on, what can I do, we're predators, how am I going to survive? Sorry, I'm lost myself. So unlike ostriches that are diurnal, which means they are active during the day and late, like the early and late hours of the day, Ornithomimuses we think were cathemeral, meaning they were active for short periods of time during both the day and the night, given it time to, like, again, if it's fitting into different niches, it might eat insects at one point, it might eat small mammals or small reptiles or small dinosaurs, it might, eat vegetation during the day and then kind of be a nocturnal predator at night. We're not entirely sure, but that's the idea. It had long arms and long fingers that might have been able to be used to grab branches and pull them into range of its mouth, which this idea is really weird because it had a neck that's, 4 or 5 feet long. Why your arms are going to grab a branch and pull it closer? Your head's already up there. Like, I don't really understand that idea. We know that its body was shorter than most others in its family, leading to paleontologists to think that it was more maneuverable. Its body was built to pivot and turn. It's not built for, being a big, heavy, defensive dinosaur. It's made to be able to outmaneuver and get away from anything. And finally, the last thing I will say about this dinosaur is there's a good deal of evidence showing that it would have had hair like feathers on portions of its body. So this is a relatively new idea compared to how long it's been alive. Or not alive, but how long it's been discovered for. We don't know a lot about the feathers, but the feathers wouldn't have been able to be used for flight. They were more for like almost like we think insulation. It could have been used to keep down dust or dander. Not entirely sure though. The jury's still out though on where they had them, if they had them, and why they had them. We have ideas. We know what works for us, and well, not for us, but for birds, we know what works today. We can kind of put a spin on that and say maybe this worked that way, but we're not entirely sure. And my last dinosaur of the day is Pachycephalosaurus. Now, Pachycephalosaurus, people probably know it. Little hammerhead. One of my favorite memes is two Pachycephalosauruses headbutting and saying that this is how bald people should fight. Like, you know what? We love this little guy. But like Ankylosaur, we have no idea about this guy. Pachycephalosaurus was named by Barnum Brown and Eric Marin Skylacher in 1943. Now, this little guy, you know, you look at him, you think you know what you're talking about. We have no clue. You see a body plan, you see everything there. We actually only have parts of the skull, and that's it. Like, we don't have a full, complete skeleton to date. The fossils have been found in North America, mostly in Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, and Alberta. It's synonymous with Tylosteus, Troodon, Wyomingensis, which means synonymous means that these dinosaurs are probably it. It's probably just given this name because we don't know any better. It could have also been Dracorex and Stygimoloch, if Dracorex and Stygimoloch are the juvenile forms of Pachycephalosaurus. We don't know a ton about this dinosaur. For being famous, we don't know a ton about it. It's hard to determine how truly big it was since the lack of remains. That picture showed it to be about 13 feet long and about 1.6 meters tall, or 6 feet. But we don't really know because all we had was a skull casing. We have the big, like the ram, and I think we have like the brow, but you can't tell how tall I am from just this. My top of my skull and like my nasal bones and my eyes, you don't know. Like Ankylosaur, as I said, it's a famous dinosaur, but we don't know much about it because, again, it was just a skull. While most evidence suggests that they were herbivorous, that ate plants and fruits and seeds and such like that, there is a debate because the front teeth resemble that of some carnivorous dinosaurs. Could it have been used to crop vegetation? Possibly. Could it have been used to chew up harder vegetables? Possibly. Again, it's a debate. We still aren't sure. Every time we find new dinosaur bones, it changes our entire outlook on dinosaurs. Spinosaurus has changed like 20 times. I love Spinosaurus. But the Spinosaurus I loved as a kid is not the Spinosaurus that's today. And that happened in my lifetime alone. So we don't know what will happen to this one. The most distinct feature was the bony dome. We think it could have been up to 10 inches thick and made of solid bone. Cool, it's a battering ram. But again, we're not entirely sure. There's never 100% because all we have is that casing. And we don't know if our Pachycephalosaurus that we found is the adult, is it the juvenile, is it, in a teenager stage? Where in the dinosaur life did we find this? It could have been much larger, could have been smaller. We don't know. Well, we know it couldn't have been smaller, but it could have been much larger, we don't think. The dome is kind of debated. Are we thinking are we looking at like rams and goats and sheep who headbutt each other? Are we thinking it was, maybe display or species recognition? Because again, the species recognition shows if you're in the area and you're like, hey, I like that bald head. Who's that? And you don't have a sign above your head saying Pachycephalosaurus. So maybe that dome shows, hey, I am Pachycephalosaurus. You are too. Let's go make more Pachycephalosauruses. It's less of a weird blind date where you're like, hey, I like your dome. And you're like, actually, I'm not Pachycephalosaurus. And you're like, well, that was a terrible date. See you later. That kind of idea, we think, might have been an idea. Look at birds. They do the same thing. Well, not with a dome, but that kind of idea. It could have been for defense. I don't have an image today, but there's been some images in the past of like Pachycephalosaurus like ramming other dinosaurs. It might work. It might not. We don't really know. And then the classification issues. Because we only have the skull casing, it's going to be short and sweet for this one, unfortunately, because we don't have all the information for this thing. This dinosaur is just a skull, and not even a complete skull. So there's all kinds of issues. Stygimoloch, Dracorex, are they their own species? Are they part of Pachycephalosaurus? Is Pachycephalosaurus even Pachycephalosaurus? It's not a wastebasket taxon dinosaur because there's not enough to even put a wastebasket in. It's just sitting there by itself. So that's pretty much it, unfortunately, for Pachycephalosaurus. I don't think I said it, but its name means thick-headed lizard. So So Pachycephalosaurus is our last dinosaur for today. So I'm really happy you came here to watch my show today. I hope you enjoyed Dino. I know I've been gone for a bit. I really hope this episode at least gave you some information. I want to shout out everybody who ever helps me, guys behind, Justin and Dan. You guys do a great job. Also, in the YouTube video, I will have the links to what I used. Prehistoric Wildlife is still extinct, the website I use for everything, but I use a web archive, so I'll link that. I don't know what happened to it. I miss you. Come back, please. But that being said, thanks for being here. My name is Eldin. I hope you enjoyed today talking about dinosaurs, and I will see you next time, hopefully sooner than later, for more dinosaurs found in Canada. Thank you, and have a good one.